She thought it was just another routine duty at the prison in Miami. But when the prisoner whispered his last wish before execution, what she did next shocked everyone watching. Stay with me until the end, because this story will stay with you long after it's over. Before we begin, make sure to like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. Officer Maria Santos had been working at Miami Correctional for 3 years. At 26, she was young, professional, and respected by everyone on her shift. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a neat bun, her uniform pressed, and her boots polished. She carried herself with quiet confidence that made inmates respect her without fear. Maria wasn't like some officers who used their power to intimidate. She treated everyone with dignity, followed the rules, and kept her personal life separate from work. But on this particular Tuesday morning in October, everything would change. The air in the prison felt heavier than usual. There was something different about the silence in the corridors, something that made Maria's chest feel tight. She had been assigned to death row for the first time in her career. Her supervisor, Captain Rodriguez, had called her into his office the day before. "Santos," he said, leaning back in his leather chair, "I'm putting you on special assignment tomorrow. Death row, execution detail." Maria felt her stomach drop. She had always known this day would come, but she wasn't prepared for how it would feel. "Yes, sir," she replied steadily. The prisoner is Marcus Williams, 34 years old, been on death row for 8 years. His execution is scheduled for 6 in the evening." Captain Rodriguez slid a file across the desk. "Read this tonight. Know who you're dealing with." Maria took the file home that evening. She sat at her kitchen table with a cup of coffee and opened it slowly. Marcus Williams had been convicted of armed robbery that resulted in the death of a store clerk. But as she read deeper into the case files, something didn't sit right. The evidence seemed thin. Witness testimonies were inconsistent. His lawyer had been overworked and inexperienced. She closed the file and tried to sleep, but her mind kept racing. The next morning, she arrived at the prison an hour early. She needed time to prepare herself mentally for what was ahead. As she walked through the death row corridor, she could feel the weight of the place. These weren't just criminals. These were human beings waiting to die. Marcus Williams was in cell 47. When Maria first saw him, she was surprised. He wasn't what she had expected. He was tall, with kind eyes and graying hair at his temples. He was reading a book, holding it carefully like it was precious to him. When he looked up and saw her, he smiled gently. "Good morning, officer," he said quietly. His voice was calm, educated. "I'm Marcus. Officer Santos," she replied professionally. But something in his manner made her feel less guarded than usual. Throughout the morning, Maria checked on Marcus several times. Each time he was polite, respectful. He asked about her day, thanked her for small courtesies. He didn't seem bitter or angry like she had expected someone facing execution to be. Instead, he seemed almost peaceful, resigned to his fate. "Officer Santos," Marcus said during one of her visits, "may I ask you something?" She paused at his cell door. "What is it? Do you have family? People who love you?" The question caught her off guard. "Yes," she said carefully. "I do." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's good. That's very good. Hold on to them." There was something in his eyes when he said this, a sadness that went deeper than fear of death. Maria found herself wondering about his story, his family, his life before this place. But she reminded herself to stay professional. She had a job to do. As the day progressed, other officers came and went. The chaplain visited. The warden made his rounds. But Maria noticed that Marcus had no visitors, no family members, no friends. He seemed completely alone in the world. When she mentioned this to Officer Jenkins, an older guard who had worked death row for 15 years, he shrugged. "Happens more than you think," Jenkins said. "Some families just can't handle it. They disappear long before the execution date." But Maria couldn't shake the image of Marcus sitting alone in his cell, reading his book, waiting to die with no one who cared about him. During her lunch break, she found herself thinking about him instead of eating. She walked past his cell again. "Marcus," she said softly, "are you all right?" He looked up from his book. "As all right as someone can be in my situation, I suppose." He paused, then said, "Officer Santos, can I tell you something?" She stepped closer to the bars. "What is it?" "I want you to know that your kindness today has meant more to me than you realize. In a place like this, small acts of humanity matter more than gold." Maria felt something stir in her chest. "Marcus, is there anything you need? Anything I can do to make today easier?" His eyes filled with tears, but he blinked them back. "Actually, there is something, but I don't know if it's possible." "What is it?" Marcus looked down at his hands, then back up at her. "I have a daughter. Her name is Isabella. She's 16 now. I haven't seen her since she was 8 years old. Her mother moved away after my conviction, changed their names, started over. I don't blame her. She was protecting Isabella from all this shame." Maria listened quietly as Marcus continued. "I wrote letters to Isabella over the years, hundreds of them. Birthday cards, Christmas cards, just telling her about my days, sharing stories about her grandfather, telling her how proud I am of the young woman I know she's becoming. But I never sent them. I kept them all in a shoebox under my bed at home." "Where are they now?" Maria asked. "That's just it. When I was arrested, everything in my apartment was thrown away. The letters, the photos, everything. All those words I wanted to say to my daughter, all those memories I wanted to share with her, they're gone." Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "My last wish, Officer Santos, is to write one final letter to Isabella, to tell her that I love her, that I'm sorry for the pain my actions caused, and that I hope someday she can forgive me. I want to tell her about her grandfather's stories, about how we used to dance in the kitchen on Sunday mornings, about how she used to fall asleep on my chest while I read to her." Maria felt her throat tighten. "Marcus, I'm not sure if that's something I can arrange. I know it's a lot to ask, but Officer Santos, I've been carrying these words in my heart for 8 years. If I die tonight without saying them, they die with me. And Isabella will never know how much her father loved her." The weight of his request settled on Maria's shoulders. She looked at this man, this father, who was hours away from death, asking for nothing more than the chance to tell his daughter he loved her. She thought about her own father, about the letters he used to leave in her lunchbox when she was little, about the bedtime stories, about the way he used to call her his princess. "Let me see what I can do," she said quietly. Marcus's face lit up with hope for the first time all day. "Thank you, Officer Santos. Thank you." As Maria walked away from his cell, she knew she was about to cross a line that could change everything. But looking back at Marcus, sitting alone in his cell with no one in the world who cared whether he lived or died, she also knew she couldn't turn her back on his request. The clock on the wall showed 2 in the afternoon. Marcus Williams had 4 hours left to live, and Maria Santos was about to make a decision that would challenge everything she thought she knew about justice, mercy, and what it means to be human. What she didn't know was that this simple act of compassion would lead to discoveries that would shake the very foundations of Marcus Williams's case and change both their lives forever. Maria stood outside the supply closet, her heart pounding against her ribs. She had told herself she was just getting paper and a pen for routine paperwork, but deep down, she knew this wasn't routine at all. She was about to help a condemned man write to the daughter he might never see again. The supply closet smelled like cleaning chemicals and old cardboard. Maria grabbed a yellow legal pad and 2 black pens, stuffing them under her uniform jacket. Her hands were trembling slightly. In 3 years of working at Miami Correctional, she had never bent the rules. Not once, but something about Marcus Williams had gotten under her skin. She walked back toward death row, each step feeling heavier than the last. Officer Jenkins was at his post, reading a newspaper and drinking coffee from a stained mug. He barely looked up as she passed. "Everything all right, Santos?" he asked without lifting his eyes from the sports section. "Fine," she replied, hoping her voice sounded steadier than she felt. "Just checking on the prisoner. When she reached cell 47, Marcus was sitting on his narrow bed, staring at the wall. His book was closed beside him. He looked up when he heard her footsteps, and his eyes went straight to the bulge under her jacket. "Officer Santos," he said quietly. "Did you?" She glanced down the corridor to make sure no one was watching, then pulled out the legal pad and pens. Marcus's eyes filled with tears again, but this time he didn't try to hide them. "I don't know how long we have," Maria whispered, sliding the items through the food slot. "And I don't know how we're going to get this letter to your daughter. But you deserve the chance to say goodbye." Marcus took the legal pad with shaking hands, holding it like it was made of gold. "Officer Santos, I don't know how to thank you. Just write," she said softly. "Write everything you want her to know." Marcus uncapped one of the pens and stared at the blank yellow paper. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then slowly, he began to write. "My dearest Isabella," he began, his voice barely audible as he spoke the words aloud. "I know you probably don't remember me very well. You were so young when I had to go away." Maria watched him write, feeling like she was witnessing something sacred. This wasn't just a letter. This was a father's heart being poured onto paper. 8 years of love and regret and hope flowing through a cheap ballpoint pen. "I want you to know about your grandfather, your abuelo," Marcus continued writing. "He used to tell the most amazing stories. He would sit you on his lap and tell you about the little princess who lived in the clouds and came down to earth to bring joy to sad people." As Marcus wrote, Maria found herself thinking about her own childhood, about the stories her grandmother used to tell her, about the way love travels through generations. She realized she was crying. "Officer Santos," Marcus said, looking up from the pad. "Can I ask you something else?" She wiped her eyes quickly. "What is it? If something happens to me before I finish this letter, will you promise me you'll find Isabella? Will you tell her that her father's last thoughts were of her?" The weight of this promise settled on Maria's chest like a stone. "Marcus, I'll do everything I can." He nodded and went back to writing. The words seemed to flow from him now, years of stored-up love finding their way onto the page. He wrote about Isabella's first steps, about the way she used to sing in the bathtub, about the butterfly garden they planted together when she was 6. "I remember the day you lost your first tooth," Marcus wrote, his hand moving faster now. "You were so proud. You kept sticking your tongue through the gap and giggling. I told you the tooth fairy was going to bring you something special, and you stayed awake all night waiting." Maria glanced at her watch. It was 3:30, 2.5 hours until execution. She knew she should leave, should go back to her other duties, but she couldn't bring herself to walk away from this moment. "Officer Santos," Marcus said without looking up from his writing, "do you think people can change? Do you think someone who's done terrible things can become a better person?" The question caught her off guard. "I think people are complicated," she said carefully. "I think we're all capable of both good and bad." Marcus nodded slowly. "I've had 8 years to think about what I did. 8 years to replay that night over and over in my mind. I can't undo it. I can't bring that man back to his family, but I can try to be better than I was." He continued writing, telling Isabella about the books he'd read in prison, about the classes he'd taken, about the other inmates he'd helped learn to read. He wrote about his regrets, about the choices that led him to that convenience store on that terrible night. "I was angry then," Marcus wrote. "Angry at the world, angry at life, angry at God. But anger is like poison, mija. It destroys you from the inside. I learned too late that love is the only thing that matters. Love is the only thing that lasts." As Maria watched Marcus pour his heart onto those yellow pages, she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about justice. Here was a man who had taken a life, who had caused immeasurable pain to a family. But here was also a father who loved his daughter, a human being who had spent 8 years trying to become better than his worst moment. "Almost done," Marcus said, looking up at her with eyes that seemed different now, lighter somehow. "Thank you for giving me this gift, Officer Santos. Thank you for seeing me as more than just a number on a cell door." He finished the letter with a flourish, signing it, "All my love, Papa," in careful cursive. Then he tore the pages from the legal pad, folded them neatly, and handed them back to Maria through the food slot. "What now?" he asked. Maria took the letter, feeling the weight of it in her hands. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I'll figure something out. I promise." As she walked away from Marcus's cell, the letter hidden once again under her jacket, Maria had no idea that her act of compassion was about to set off a chain of events that would uncover the truth about Marcus Williams's case. She didn't know that the letter she was carrying contained clues that would lead to new evidence, new witnesses, and shocking revelations about what really happened that night 8 years ago. All she knew was that a father had been given the chance to say goodbye to his daughter, and somehow, that felt like the most important thing in the world. The clock in the corridor ticked loudly. 4 o'clock. 2 hours until execution. But Maria Santos was no longer the same person who had walked into the prison that morning. She was a woman carrying a letter that would change everything. Maria clutched the letter against her chest as she walked down the corridor, her mind racing with possibilities. How could she possibly get this letter to Isabella? She didn't even know the girl's last name now, or where she lived. All she knew was that somewhere out there, a 16-year-old girl was going about her life, unaware that her father was about to die. The weight of Marcus's words echoed in her mind. "If something happens to me before I finish this letter, will you promise me you'll find Isabella?" She had made that promise without thinking, driven by compassion rather than logic. Now she had to figure out how to keep it. Maria made her way to the small office where she kept her personal belongings. She pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment. What she was about to do could cost her job, her reputation, everything she had worked for. But the image of Marcus sitting alone in his cell, pouring his heart onto those yellow pages, wouldn't leave her mind. She opened her laptop and began searching. Williams was a common name, but she started with Miami, then expanded to Florida, then the entire country. She searched social media, public records, anything that might lead her to Isabella. Hours seemed to pass, but when she looked at the clock, only 20 minutes had gone by. Then something caught her eye. A news article from 8 years ago about Marcus's case. She had read the file, but this was different. This was a human interest piece that ran after his conviction. It mentioned his daughter by name, Isabella Maria Williams. The article said she was 8 at the time, which would make her 16 now, just as Marcus had said. But more importantly, the article mentioned that Isabella's mother, Carmen Rodriguez, had family in Orlando. Maria's heart started beating faster. It wasn't much, but it was something. She grabbed her phone and started calling every Rodriguez in the Orlando area. Most calls went to voicemail. Others were wrong numbers. But on her 7th call, an elderly woman answered. "Hello?" The voice was cautious, tired. "Hi, I'm looking for Carmen Rodriguez. She has a daughter named Isabella." There was a long pause. "Who's asking?" Maria's throat felt dry. "My name is Maria Santos. I'm calling from Miami Correctional. I have something for Isabella from her father." The silence on the other end was deafening. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "Carmen doesn't want anything from him. Neither does Isabella." "Please," Maria said, her voice breaking. "He's going to die tonight. This is his last wish, just to let his daughter know he loves her." She could hear the woman breathing on the other end, could almost feel her internal struggle through the phone. "Isabella doesn't even know he's still alive," the woman finally said. "Carmen told her he died years ago. She thought it would be easier." Maria felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. She doesn't know? Carmen wanted to protect her. The girl has been through enough. She's a good student, has friends, a normal life. Why bring all that pain back now? Because he's her father, Maria said firmly. And she has a right to know that he loved her until his very last breath. The woman was quiet for so long that Maria thought she had hung up. Then, hold on. Maria could hear muffled voices in the background, what sounded like an argument. Finally, a different voice came on the line. "Younger, stronger, this is Carmen. What do you want? Maria took a deep breath. Mrs. Rodriguez, I'm Officer Maria Santos at Miami Correctional. Your former husband, Marcus Williams, is scheduled for execution tonight. He asked me to give his daughter a letter. I don't want Isabella involved in this, Carmen said sharply. She's moved on. We both have. I understand you want to protect her, Maria said carefully. But don't you think she deserves to know the truth? Don't you think she deserves to make her own choice about whether to read her father's last words? There was another long silence. Then Carmen's voice, softer now, filled with years of pain. You don't understand what it was like. The trial, the media, the shame. Isabella was just a baby. She asked about her daddy for months after he was arrested. I told her he went to heaven so she would stop asking. She's not 8 anymore, Maria said gently. She's 16, old enough to handle the truth. Carmen was crying now. Maria could hear it in her voice. What does the letter say? I haven't read it, Maria replied honestly. But I watched him write it. He wrote about her childhood, about her grandfather's stories, about how much he loves her. He wrote about his mistakes and his regrets. It's a father's love letter to his daughter. The clock on the wall showed 4:45, an hour and 15 minutes until execution. Where are you now? Maria asked. Orlando. We're in Orlando. Maria's mind raced. Orlando was 3.5 hours from Miami. There was no way to get the letter there in time. No way for Isabella to read it before her father died. Unless, Mrs. Rodriguez, Maria said quickly. I know this is a lot to ask, but could you put Isabella on the phone? I could read the letter to her. Absolutely not, Carmen said immediately. I won't put her through that. Then what if I read it to you first? You decide if she should hear it. Carmen was quiet again. Maria could hear her breathing, could almost feel the weight of 8 years of secrets and pain pressing down on her. Okay, Carmen finally whispered. Read it to me. Maria's hands shook as she unfolded the yellow pages. She began to read Marcus's words aloud. His declaration of love for his daughter, his memories of their time together, his regrets about the path his life had taken. As she read, she could hear Carmen crying on the other end of the line. When she finished, there was a long silence. He remembered, Carmen whispered. He remembered the butterfly garden. He remembered her first tooth. I thought he had forgotten all those things. He never forgot, Maria said softly. He's carried those memories with him every day for 8 years. Carmen was quiet for another moment. Then, Isabella's at school right now. She doesn't know about any of this. I don't know if I can... Mrs. Rodriguez, Maria interrupted gently. I understand this is painful, but in 1 hour Marcus Williams is going to die, and his daughter will never know that his last thoughts were of her. Is that really what you want? The silence stretched on. Maria looked at the clock. 5 o'clock? 1 hour left. Bring Isabella to the phone, Carmen finally said. But I want to talk to her first. I want to explain. Maria's heart pounded as she waited. She could hear Carmen calling for Isabella, could hear a teenage girl's voice asking what was wrong. Then came the conversation she couldn't quite make out. Carmen's voice explaining, Isabella's voice rising in shock and confusion. After what felt like forever, a young voice came on the line. Tentative, scared. Hello? Isabella? Maria's voice caught in her throat. This is Officer Santos. I have a letter from your father. My father is dead, Isabella said flatly. No, sweetheart, he's not. He's been in prison. And tonight he's going to die. But before he does, he wanted you to know how much he loves you. Isabella was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was small, like the 8-year-old girl she had been when her father was taken away. Will you read it to me? Maria looked at the clock one more time. 5:15. 45 minutes until execution. She began to read Marcus's letter aloud, every word he had written with such love and care. As she read, she could hear Isabella crying, could hear Carmen crying too. When she finished, Isabella's voice was barely a whisper. Can I talk to him? Maria's heart stopped. Isabella, I don't know if that's possible. The rules. Please, Isabella said, her voice stronger now. Please, I need to talk to my daddy. Maria looked down the corridor toward death row, toward cell 47 where Marcus Williams sat waiting to die. She thought about the rules, about her job, about everything she could lose. Then she thought about a father who had spent 8 years loving his daughter from a distance, and a daughter who had just learned that the man she thought was dead was alive, and thinking of her until his very last moment. "Hold on," Maria said. "Let me see what I can do." The clock kept ticking. Time was running out. But Maria Santos was about to make another decision that would change everything. Maria ran down the corridor, her footsteps echoing against the concrete walls. Her heart pounded as she approached Marcus's cell, the phone pressed against her ear with Isabella still on the line. She could hear the teenager's quiet sobs, could feel the weight of 8 years of separation about to collapse into a single moment. "Marcus," Maria called softly as she reached cell 47. "Marcus, I have someone who wants to talk to you." He looked up from where he sat on his narrow bed, his eyes immediately going to the phone in her hand. His face went pale as understanding washed over him. "Is it?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Maria nodded, tears streaming down her face. She looked around quickly to make sure no other guards were nearby, then pressed the phone against the bars of his cell. "Isabella?" Marcus said tentatively, his voice shaking. "Mija, is that really you? Daddy?" The word came out broken, filled with 8 years of confusion and pain. "Daddy, they told me you were dead." Marcus closed his eyes, gripping the phone through the bars. "I'm so sorry, baby girl. I'm so sorry for everything. I used to dream about you," Isabella whispered. "I used to dream that you would come back and we would go to the park like we used to. Mama said I was just making it up, that I was too young to remember." "I remember everything," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. "I remember teaching you to ride your bike in the courtyard behind our apartment. I remember how you used to make me tea parties with your stuffed animals. I remember reading you stories every night before bed." Maria watched this reunion through the bars, feeling like she was witnessing something sacred. She knew she was breaking every rule in the book, but she also knew this was the most important thing she had ever done. "Daddy, why did you have to go away?" Isabella asked, her voice small and lost. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I made a terrible mistake, Mija. I hurt someone, and I had to face the consequences. But I want you to know that leaving you was the hardest thing I've ever had to do." "Are you really going to die tonight?" Isabella's voice broke on the last word. "Yes, baby girl, but I'm not afraid anymore, because I got to hear your voice one more time. I got to tell you how much I love you." Maria glanced at her watch. 5:30, 30 minutes until execution. She could hear footsteps in the distance, other guards beginning their final preparations. She knew their time was almost up. "Isabella," Marcus said urgently, "I need you to listen to me. I need you to know that you are the best thing I ever did in this world. You are smart and beautiful and good, and I am so proud to be your father." "I love you too, Daddy," Isabella sobbed. "I never stopped loving you. I want you to be happy, Mija. I want you to live a beautiful life, go to college, fall in love, have children of your own someday. And when you do, tell them about their abuelo who loved their mama more than life itself." The footsteps were getting closer now. Maria could hear voices, official conversations about timing and procedures. She knew she had to end this call soon. "Daddy, I don't want you to die," Isabella cried. "There has to be something we can do. Sometimes life doesn't give us the choices we want, baby girl. But you gave me the greatest gift tonight. You gave me peace." Officer Jenkins appeared at the end of the corridor, walking toward them with purpose. Maria's blood ran cold. She had to act fast. "Isabella, I have to go now," Marcus said quickly, seeing Maria's panicked expression. "But I want you to remember something. Every time you see a butterfly, that's me watching over you. Every time you hear your favorite song, that's me singing to you. I will never really leave you. I love you, Daddy," Isabella whispered one more time. "Te amo, mi princesa," Marcus replied. "Forever and always." Maria quickly pulled the phone away from the bars just as Officer Jenkins reached them. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the device steady. "Santos, what are you doing?" Jenkins asked, his voice suspicious. "Just checking on the prisoner," Maria replied, hoping her voice sounded calmer than she felt. "Making sure he's ready for transport." Jenkins looked at Marcus, then back at Maria. "Transport is in 20 minutes. Warden wants all non-essential personnel cleared from this block." Maria watched through the small window as Marcus Williams was led to the execution chamber at exactly 6 o'clock that evening. His last words were a prayer for his daughter's happiness. 3 months later, new evidence surfaced that proved Marcus was innocent. The real killer confessed on his deathbed, but it was too late. Maria kept her promise, though. She stayed in touch with Isabella, helping her heal from years of lies and loss. Sometimes the greatest act of humanity isn't following the rules. Sometimes it's knowing when to break them. What would you have done in Maria's position? Let me know in the comments below.